Please lose your shit for Lev Cantoral!
Alright, tonight I'm going to talk to you about something that I love, and that is television. Good stuff on television, like, for one, revolutionary once-in-a-generation comedians. Thanks for the invite, Ian. The other thing that you can find on TV are cartoons. So right now, I want to do a little bit of a thought exercise. Everybody, think about your favorite cartoons. What cartoons do you love? A lot of you might be thinking about a lot of those classic cartoons from the 90s, right? Like Dexter's Lab, or the Powerpuff Girls, or the Animaniacs, or Ren and Stimpy. And what made these cartoons so amazing, it's not just the nostalgia, but the fact that they were creator-driven. The fact that these were the products of unique and talented artists putting their own visions on the screen. And the precursor to all of that, what made these possible, was one cartoon. Do you know what it is? That's right. Here he comes, that mighty mouse, coming to vanquish the foe with a mighty blow, and so on. That was the 1987 Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures. Before Ren and Stimpy, before the creator of Ren and Stimpy, John Kricfalusi, created Ren and Stimpy, he directed the 1987 version of Mighty Mouse. Now, let's be clear, there have been 3 iterations of Mighty Mouse. The first was in 1942, the second was in 1979, but those versions stunk. You don't want to hear me talk about those versions. The one you want to hear me talk about is the 1987 version, created by none other than X-rated animated feature film director Ralph Bakshi, otherwise known as the bad boy of animation. If it weren't for this roguish renegade, the animation industry would still be stuck in the rut that it was in the early 80s. And now look, don't get me wrong, I don't want to badmouth all those great Saturday morning cartoons you all know and love, like Transformers, or G.I. Joe, or the Alf cartoon, or the Fonz cartoon, but the point of the matter is that those cartoons were the result of market testing, corporate synergy, and worst of all, a term called marquee value. The philosophy behind being that children wouldn't take a liking to any cartoon characters that they didn't already recognize. Which, look, I don't have to tell you is fundamentally absurd, because obviously every cartoon character at some point begins as an original idea. No one had any idea who the uproariously popular Looney Tunes character Cecil Turtle was before 1941. But that just wasn't the market that TV networks were in anymore. But that's exactly what Bakshi and Kricfalusi were trying to do. They were trying to get an original Saturday morning cartoon made in the mid-1980s. So, Bakshi sets up meetings with the 3 major networks at the time, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And predictably, they turned down every idea that Bakshi and Kricfalusi had prepared. CBS is the last network that Bakshi meets with. And after turning down every idea he comes in with, he reaches back into his memory banks, and he thinks about the first job he ever had in the animation industry, which was being a cell polisher on the very original Mighty Mouse shorts produced by Terry Toons. And so he says, wait, I've got a cartoon, I've got Mighty Mouse! And he had no idea, he didn't have Mighty Mouse, he didn't know the rights to Mighty Mouse, he hadn't given a second of thought to Mighty Mouse, but CBS buys it. So then he has to figure out who does have the rights to Mighty Mouse, which was Viacom, calls them up, they weren't doing anything with it, so he buys the rights from them, then sells them to CBS, and that's how Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures was born. Then, the other key to this puzzle is John Kricfalusi. Much like Ralph Bakshi, Kricfalusi was a total nut. He too served his time in the animation industry working on creatively bankrupt, dead-end animated shows at Filmation in the early 80s. Shows like Super Friends, or the Tom and Jerry cartoon show, which was a shitty remake of Tom and Jerry. But like his art, the art that he did for himself, was bonkers. It was abstract, expressionist stuff that like a mental patient would draw. And the only person who would have given him a venue to do that sort of stuff in the mid-1980s was Ralph Bakshi. And now Bakshi and Kricfalusi had their in. Mighty Mouse was the Trojan horse that allowed CBS to lower the gates and let the renegade artists sneak in. And what resulted was one of the biggest victories in the age-old war between artists and executives. And don't deny that there is a war, because there's a war. Mighty Mouse subverted every expectation of what a Saturday morning cartoon was supposed to be. It had off-color humor, it was satirical, it made fun of the network it was on. It was a cartoon actually made by cartoonists in a time when everything was as assembly line produced and homogenous as possible. The artists actually wrote the episodes. They didn't hire TV screenwriters. And so what that meant is because the artists had authorial control, they would add jokes in at every step of the process. And they were constantly sneaking stuff past the censors. And whenever the network would get on their case, Bakshi would make sure to defend them. Stories involve Bakshi burning network notes or hanging up the phone on network executives whenever he got them to admit that they didn't actually have any legal authority over the production. Other anecdotes involve him distracting executives as they viewed rushes of the episodes. Whenever a particularly risque joke was about to appear on the screen, he would turn to them and go, "Hey, you see the baseball game?" Now, unfortunately, Mighty Mouse wouldn't last past a second season, but its mark was undeniable. After Mighty Mouse, you begin to see its trademark aspects in other Saturday morning cartoons. You see wacky, exaggerated character designs. You see wonky, expressionistic backgrounds. In 1989, a cartoon premieres on Fox called The Simpsons that wasn't geared at children, but was geared at adults, something that Ralph Bakshi might have liked to have done. And suddenly, every network was clamoring for its own unique cartoon. Nickelodeon was the first out of the gate in 1991 with its first original slate of programming, with Jim Jenkins' Doug, Klasky Csupo's Rugrats, and of course, the Ren and Stimpy Show, created by none other than Mighty Mouse's John Kricfalusi. And this was all thanks to the one man who had the temerity to buck the restraints and prove that creative freedom could be beneficial to the networks as well as the artists. And this resulted in an environment that's actually far more likely to show audiences what's so valuable, and dare I say magical, about the medium of animation. Thanks.